Welcome to The Explainer. Our goal is pretty simple. We take complex topics and break them down into clear, engaging presentations. It's a timeless question, isn't it? And today, we're going to dive into that by looking at a really fascinating power struggle from the ancient Near East. Okay, so our story kicks off in 2 Kings chapter 3, verse 1. This verse immediately sets the political stage for us. The year is about 852 BC, and a new king, Jehoram, is taking the throne. And yeah, he's the son of the notorious King Ahab. Now, to really get what's going on, you have to remember the context. For almost a century at this point, the kingdom has been split in two. You have the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah, and they're basically two separate parallel powers. That's why the text is so careful to sync up their timelines. So here are our main players on the board. You've got our guy Jehoram taking power in the north in his capital Samaria, and at the exact same time, down south in Jerusalem, you have the long-reigning King Jehoshaphat. This sets up a really interesting dynamic between these two related, but often rival kingdoms. Okay, now here's where it gets really juicy. Verse 2 gives us this, it's basically a performance review for the new king. And it's a mixed bag. He's labeled as doing evil, but, and this is a huge but, he wasn't as bad as his infamous parents, Ahab and Jezebel. So he does something pretty significant right out of the gate. He gets rid of the official state-sponsored idol of Baal. This was a major religious and political statement. It was a clear signal that he was breaking from the extreme Baal worship that his mom and dad were famous for. But verse 3 slams on the brakes. That word, nevertheless, is doing some seriously heavy lifting here. It tells us that whatever good he did, it was dangerously incomplete. He might have removed one huge problem, but he held on tight to another one. And this is the absolute crux of the issue. Look at the contrast. The text says he cleaved unto the sins of Jeroboam. That's a strong phrase. It means this wasn't an oversight. It was a deliberate, conscious choice. He got rid of the obvious foreign idolatry of his parents, but he kept an older, foundational sin that was basically part of the kingdom's DNA. So you might be asking, what exactly were these sins? Well, think of it like this. Almost 200 years before our story, a king named Jeroboam set up a whole rival religious system. He put up golden calves and created new worship centers, all for a political reason, to stop people from going south to the rival capital Jerusalem to worship. It was institutionalized sin. And then, bam, verse 4 suddenly pivots. We go from all this internal religious politics to a major external threat. We meet this guy, King Mesha of Moab, which is a neighboring kingdom, and the text describes him as a sheep master, which is just to say his entire nation's wealth was tied up in livestock. And get this, Moab was forced to pay Israel an annual tribute of 200,000 animals, plus all their wool. I mean, can you imagine? This wasn't just a tax. It was an absolutely crushing economic burden designed to show everyone who was boss. See, under Jehoram's dad, the powerful King Ahab, Israel had been a regional superpower. And this insane tribute was the proof. It was literally draining Moab's primary economic resource, year after year after year. And this is just so cool, because this isn't just a story from an old book. We have archaeology that backs it up. The famous Mesha stele is a stone monument that King Mesha himself had made. And guess what it talks about? Being subjected to Israel and then his glorious rebellion right after Ahab died. It's his side of the exact same story. So, verse 5 is where it all comes to a head. This is the breaking point. This is the direct consequence of that power shift. With the strong man, Ahab, out of the picture, Mesha sees his moment. I mean, you can see the dominoes falling, right? The powerful king, Ahab, is dead. That creates a power vacuum, and Mesha doesn't hesitate for a second. He makes his move, declares independence, and cuts off that crippling tribute payment. And you have to understand, this wasn't just some random act of defiance. This was textbook, ancient politics. It's what you did. When a powerful king died and his son took over, you'd rebel. You were testing the new guy, probing for any sign of weakness. And they were looking right at Jehoram. So let's just recap the chain of events real quick. A new king, Jehoram, takes the throne and starts with a compromised, half-hearted reform. He looks weaker than his father. An oppressed neighbor, seeing that power vacuum, seizes the moment. And the result? A full-blown rebellion that is about to explode into a massive war. And this is what leaves us with this huge final thought. From one angle, you could argue Jehoram was being a smart politician. He's been pragmatic, trying to please one group without totally alienating another. But the story shows how that incomplete change, that perceived weakness, actually invited conflict. It's a lesson that is just as relevant for any leader today, and it makes you wonder, when does pragmatism cross the line and become a fatal flaw?